Greetings. We're here in Oregon wheat country, just after the harvest. I want to take a few moments to talk to you about an important question when you're poor, when you're homeless, and when you're hungry. To glean or not to glean? Well, it depends on the food, if it's food you can eat or food you're willing to eat. And when you're hungry and there's a free meal in front of you, it's almost kind of silly to turn it down. And so despite the fact that this is non-organic, GMO, herbicide sprayed wheat, it's free, we have permission to take it, and we're gonna go ahead and do it. And wheat's pretty easy to gather. You just wanna get your little seed heads there, and we got a bowl set up, of course, and just wanna grind it right in. Just like, you can see the so-called berries or fruit or kernels just come right out. And you can grab whole handfuls of the stuff. If you want, you can cut it off with a knife and put it in. Now, if you're going to be gleaning, you obviously are going to want to be very, very cognizant of not only private property, but also you want to be very, very cognizant of when the right time is to harvest. For example, here in Oregon's wheat country in north central Oregon, right now it's late July. That's right about the harvest time. So if you know when they're cutting the wheat, you can come in and ask them if you can glean, if you don't mind the fact that it's GMO or non-organic Roundup sprayed wheat. Normally we try to do all organic foods and non-GMO whenever possible, but you don't turn down a free lunch. We even have trouble digesting the wheat gluten, but we're not celiac and we can have some without too much trouble, so we're going to go for it. And what we do with this after we, of course, sort of winnow it down, we're going to want to break it up really good here. You can hear them harvesting. It was only a couple days ago they cut this field, and you want to know about the exact time they harvested, because sometimes as soon as they're done harvesting, they'll get right back to spraying herbicide, and you don't want a fresh coating of herbicide on everything. That's extra washing, and if you're concerned about contamination. Now, normally out here it's very, very windy, so the only way we could do the video is on a non-windy day, so we'll have to make wind. So you can see pretty quickly you can get down to some wheat berries. And what you're going to want to do, of course, pick out all the little bits of husk and such. And you're going to want to take your kernels and you're going to want to run them through a food processor or a magic bullet or something along those lines, something that can pulverize it into a flour. Really cool way to do it would be to use a hand mill, so you have completely off the grid, no solar power needed, no power bill required to make yourself some flour. And you'd be surprised how much flour you can get. Basically, whatever this measurement is, give or take, is the equivalent of flour. So there's maybe a half cup there in just a few minutes. And what could you do with 2 or 3 cups or 4 cups of flour? Well, in a few minutes you can make yourself a few cups of flour doing this. And with those few cups of flour, you can make yourself a loaf of bread. And that's a really, really simple way to feed yourself. Humans have been feeding themselves on wheat for thousands and thousands of years. And it's definitely a decent source of nutrients and protein if you can digest the gluten. Not everybody can. We can have a little, as we said, but this is a compromise. Thousands of years ago it was completely organic. There was no such thing as non-organic or pesticides or herbicides or anything. So for us this is a compromise. For you, this might not be, and you might not give a crap at all. And more power to you if you can tolerate all the stuff that we can't, as far as diet or herbicides, that sort of thing. It's a really great way to feed yourself. And as you can see, this goes on all the way down the row for acres and acres and miles, and there are thousands and thousands of acres out here. You see all this here, all this wheat hasn't been cut yet. It's always along the fence line, or there's even volunteer, as you can see here. It's growing all the way on the other side of the fence line. And that's not even going to be harvested at all. It's just going to fall to the ground. So if that doesn't feed somebody, it's just kind of a waste. So in that kind of a case, why not ask a farmer if you can glean the wheat he's not even going to bother trying to harvest. Please, can I have this volunteer wheat that just grew randomly next to your fence that you can't even get your machine to? Sure. Or they may not, but it's always best to ask permission. Do not subscribe to the philosophy that it's better to ask forgiveness than permission. That is wrong. That is how you take what you want without having to ask or be nice or be polite or courteous or respectful. Be respectful, be courteous, be polite. Don't set foot on someone's private property or wheat field or cornfield or fruit orchard, for example, over near Hood River, without asking explicit permission. Exactly what you're going to take, where you're going to take it. You do not want anything to be considered a theft, because unfortunately feeding yourself without permission is still a crime today. And it's pretty sad. So do ask permission. Oftentimes they might be all too glad to keep rotting fruit off the ground that they don't have to go stepping in and that sort of thing. Or, maybe you'll volunteer to pull up some of the weeds too, like some of this China lettuce that is just rampant all through here. Sure, I'll yank that up too for you while I'm passing by it, or some of these thistles or various things. But I think we should get ourselves onto some more winnowing and create some more wheat berries for flour and feed ourselves for free. And we want to thank you so much for joining us here after the harvest in Oregon's wheat country to talk about the all-important question, to glean or not to glean.